Hello, welcome to this video. My name's Dan, aka Lucen, and today I'm going to be doing a bit more of a songwriting focused video for you. We're going to be diving into art pop and asking the question, was it ahead of its time? And was it a mess or was it a masterpiece? Ooh, let's go. So, Gaga, love of my life. I wanted to do another Lady Gaga songwriting video for a while, and I was kind of like not sure what to kind of focus it on. But then, like, in the last couple of weeks, art pop has like seen such a huge resurgence in the charts, and loads of people have been talking about it because of what happened with DJ White Shadow put out on Twitter, spoke about the supposed Artpop Act 2 that never got released, and a petition was formed, and all the fans started this new hashtag buy art pop on iTunes as a way of kind of supporting art pop and proving to Gaga that we love the album. So this kind of question has definitely been rumbling, like, was art pop worthy of a sequel, Artpop Act 2, or was it too much of a mess? And actually, would now be the perfect time? So I'm going to be digging into the songwriting and what my opinion is. We're going to answer that question, was art pop ahead of its time? Before we get started though, if you love songwriting focused videos, then I also do reaction videos if you haven't seen those. My reactions are basically like me trying to figure out what the songs are as I listen to them and giving my, like, obviously my initial opinion and everything. So if you like that kind of video, then please subscribe to the channel. Yeah, and like this video if you like it. Cool. Let's go. I've got my special t-shirt on. Humble brag. Enigma. Yes, and I'm ready. So the year is 2013, and Gaga's at the top of her game. She released The Fame Monster, and then Born This Way, and each one got successively bigger and more popular. She broke loads of records. She became the biggest artist in the world. And suddenly the spotlight was on her to kind of say, okay, well, what's next? What are you going to do next? And art pop was what was next. I think that pressure, it seems to have got to her with this album. So she actually said recently on Twitter, in response to all of the stuff going on, she talked about how it was a hugely destructive time in her life and how it kind of almost broke her to make this album. The same thing was said by DJ White Shadow, her like main collaborator and producer on this album. And I think that like that kind of context really goes to show like what the album was to her and what she was kind of trying to emote with this album. Artistically, like, it was all on the edge, you know, and it really felt like it was a rebellion against the kind of mainstream success that she'd already found. And you look at like the art pop concert that like preceded the release of the album, with her like being in the world's first flying suit and vomiting on a drummer and all this kind of stuff. It was like really like edgy, almost like trying for shocks. Does that make sense? It kind of seems like maybe she was in this headspace that was like, I'm not a mainstream pop star, I am an artist. So the context around the album was already kind of quite edgy and quite destructive and quite raw. I think that is the foundation for, you know, what could be brilliant art. If you look back in history, some of the best art was written at some of the most tumultuous times in these people's lives. Next, we're going to dig into the music, and then we'll actually figure out, was it a masterpiece that the world didn't understand at the time, or was it just a mess? This album is nuts. It's a ride. What I've written down in my notes is that it's a battering ram of slamming EDM and nonconformist musical style. And I think that's probably the best way to put it. Like, production-wise, it's like almost like to the point where it like hurts your ears on some songs. Musically as well, she uses loads of different tempos, she uses different modes and different keys throughout different songs that really kind of say to us, you know, I am not following the kind of given pop song structure, I'm really trying to push the boundaries. And then lyrically, it goes to a whole new level of really kind of out there concepts. Like, you look through the album and each song is almost like it belongs in its own world. So you have like the classical artist metaphors in Venus, inspired by the Birth of Venus painting by Botticelli. It goes to fashion, which is obviously another element of art in the song Fashion and in Donatella. But then she goes kind of completely like off track with songs like Dope, which is like the depths of depression, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking, and it's a ballad on an EDM album. And you've got my favourite song on the album, which is Gypsy, which is like this epic love story. And then you've got something like Swine, which is just like very edgy in terms of its like lyrical content, like demonetization level if I talked about it too strongly. So basically you've got stories going like up, down, ever in between. You've got depressed, you've got euphoric, you've got cheeky and funny, you've got incredibly serious and depressing. And then, of course, you have Do What You Want. And I think this is one of the songs that really does symbolize, you know, where Gaga's headspace was, as she has now pulled it from streaming services. Although the song lyrically is about her saying to the media, you know, you can do what you want with my body, but you don't have control over my mind and over my art and over my style. I think the hook is like so intentionally misleading that she kind of knows that it's edgy, sexual, provocative, to the point where the feature, R. Kelly, who is the reason it's now been taken off because of him being found guilty for sexual abuse, which is so bad when you actually look at that. His verse doesn't match what she's set up. He's looked at that and taken it really literally. She knew that it was edgy. She knew that it was like provocative and controversial, and she did it anyway. And I think that really does signify where the album is. It's pushing things to a point where they're so controversial that a few years later she's had to completely take that song off of the album. It's really, really saying something about how much of a mess the album actually is in a way. This is where the kind of mess or masterpiece thing comes in, because like in so many ways you could look at this album and say it doesn't all match up. You've got a ballad like Dope on the same album as something like Swine. So there really is a case to be said for it really being like a complete mess. But there is so much to take from it artistically that really kind of screams masterpiece. It is something that nobody has ever done before. It is a mastery of pop music to be able to make something that is catchy and hooky, but to be able to make it about a painting, the birth of Venus, and to go through the planets and include the line, Uranus, don't you know my ass is famous? It's like, isn't that like, it's kind of like the hookiest, cheekiest thing to put it in a song like that. It's just like, it is something that nobody else would ever have even tried doing, especially being known as a pop star, you know. And I think that does make it, in certain aspects, a real masterpiece, because she does push the art form, you know, to new levels. It's quite astounding. The central line of the song Art Pop is art pop could mean anything. In a way, that kind of signifies how it is a masterpiece and how it is a mess at the same time, because it doesn't all hang together as one thing. It could mean anything, and I think she does at points get lost in this concept. But when in that headspace, when freed from the chains of pop music and going into something more like art, she has pushed the genre and pushed music into a place that had never quite been. I think that's why so many people were kind of switched off by it, was because it doesn't necessarily hang together. It doesn't feel like the kind of pop music that people were expecting after Born This Way. That being said, a lot of people do love it, and I am one of those people. It doesn't appease the mainstream, but for people who love music and love things that kind of make them question what is pop music, this is an incredible album. So to answer the question, is it ahead of its time? Was the album ahead of its time? I think in some ways, yes, because over the last 8 years since it came out, I think people are much more open. With the advent of streaming, people are discovering so many more out there versions upon pop music that they're getting suggested. That back in 2008, streaming was around, but it wasn't quite so big. You know, people wouldn't necessarily have put money down for an edge case piece of pop music. So with the advent of streaming, people's music tastes have definitely broadened, and I think that one of the biggest examples of that is Billie Eilish, and how she has managed to become a huge mainstream success, but not by creating like bright and happy, ear-catching, hooky bops, but by making stuff that's dark and intense and really close up and creepy, and that really plays with genre and really plays with style and really plays with production in a new way. And I think that is something that art pop was doing back in 2013. Had art pop actually released a bit later, it probably would have been accepted more in the same way that Billie's music has been accepted. In terms of genre, I wouldn't say that it was ahead of its time, because EDM kind of actually started to kind of phase out at that point to make way for hip hop. But in terms of like how it pushed pop music, I definitely think it was ahead of its time. Also, I actually discovered art pop ahead of its time. I didn't listen to it back in 2013. I wasn't the same level of Gaga fan then as I am now. I think it was actually stuff like art pop that actually turned me into a massive Gaga fan. When Joanne came out in 2016, it really kind of inspired me to really get into Gaga even more. And I then went back and listened to art pop and actually gave it the chance it kind of deserved. I was absolutely blown away by it. I remember listening to Aura and just being like, what is this? I've never heard anything like this before. This is incredible. I was too frightened almost back in the day. I heard a couple of songs from it and was like, what is this? I think I heard like Swine and was like, what is this? This is not my vibe. I was very much scared of it. In those 4 years, I think that I'd learned to really open my ears and really listen to music and really learn from music and really appreciate music that pushed boundaries. So I think that like my personal kind of story with art pop really does actually kind of mirror what art pop is as an album and how it was ahead of its time. People just weren't ready to hear something that was quite so edgy and quite so genre pushing. And I think that like the world is kind of much more ready now to embrace something like art pop, and I hope through the all these like Twitter hashtag movements and through hopefully Art Pop Act 2, I will be here with a reaction if it comes out, and I hope you're ready. I hope that the world accepts art pop and realizes what an incredible album it is, because actually, yeah, sometimes the best art is born out of destruction, it is born out of pain, and sometimes the best art is hidden in the messiness, you know? For every jewels and drugs, there is a gypsy. Let me know what your opinions of art pop are in the comment section. I'd love to really kick off a conversation about what is it about that album that really gets you going? What is it about that album that inspires you? Or do you hate it? Is it your worst Gaga album? Is it just too abrasive? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would be very, very interested to hear what you think. If you want to check out more of my songwriting analysis videos, I'll link the playlist for you. Let me know if there are any other artists you'd love me to dig into the songwriting of. Thank you so much for tuning in to the end. I'll see you on Friday for another reaction. Cool. Bye.